Hello there, Homestead 101 scholars, and welcome back for Lecture 3, where we get to start talking about gardening. All right, now when we're talking about gardening and we're setting our garden up for the first time, we have a few decisions to make. So we're going to spend a lot of time in the planning method to try to minimize the disappointments that we have during our growing season. So we're going to really break this down to start making some decisions. And I'm going to have some tools for you at the end that can help you along the way. Okay, when we first start thinking about gardening, we have to decide what type of root system we're going to have. Are we planting in soil or are we planting in water? And if we're planting in water, are we doing aquaponics or hydroponics? Okay. The main difference between aquaponics and hydroponics is that hydroponics requires you to add the nutrients to the water that your plants will need, while aquaponics, it's usually attached to a fish tank, and the excrements from the fish tend to feed your plants. Now, if we're talking about I want to go and say that all of those methods can be done indoors or outdoors. It just matters about what climate you're in and what's going to work best for you. If you're just getting started, I recommend starting small so that you can really see what works best for you. And if you're running into any issues, how do you trouble solve to fix those things? So let's start talking about gardening in soil. We're going to go outside first. So if we're gardening outside, we have to decide, are we gardening in the soil? Are we doing raised beds? Are we doing elevated beds? Are we doing vertical beds? Now, those considerations will depend on how much space you have to dedicate to your gardening. If you are in a condo or an apartment, you may want to consider doing vertical beds. Now, vertical beds can be both aquaponics and hydroponics, can be both water and soil, but we're sticking to soil right now. If you live in an area where you can garden, well, if you have a house, you have a yard where you can garden, but you have an issue with pests, say rabbits or squirrels or things of that nature, you may want to consider doing elevated beds where they're about 3.5 to 4 feet off the ground, and you're not worried about rabbits or squirrels getting into your fruits and veggies. If you live in an area where the soil is not really soil, let's say it's sand. I live in the desert area near Palm Springs, and so it is all sand. A lot of amendment had to go into doing my in-ground beds, so I made the choice to start with 4 raised beds that were 4x4 areas. So that gave me 64 square feet of gardening in a raised bed, and I didn't have to do a lot of digging. As I've added to my garden area, I've stopped using the raised beds and I transitioned to planting in the ground. But there's a lot of amendment that went with that. If you're just starting out and you live in an area that's predominantly sandy, you might want to consider what's going to work best for you. Then I want to talk about water systems. Now, if we are considered doing hydroponics or aquaponics, both of which can be done indoors and outdoors, we have to consider how much space we're going to have. There are some really nice hydroponic systems that are very tall. They don't take up a lot of space, and you can put a lot of fruits and veggies in there. But the startup cost is pretty high. I looked at one system, it was $500. I was like, shut the front door. That's not for me. But an aquaponics system that's predominantly being fed by your fish, that was a little less expensive. So I mentioned that I plan on doing my romaine gardening, or planting my romaine lettuce with an aquaponics system in the house. For all of these considerations, you want to consider what predators you have in the area. Who is going to come and steal your fruits and veggies, and what you can do to wall them off. When I transitioned from having raised beds to in-ground planting, I bought an electric fence that I put around the entire area, but I wasn't experiencing success because I thought I was guarding against rabbits, but I wasn't guarding against rabbits. I was protecting my fruits and veggies from ground squirrels. So it wasn't helping me at all. So now I went and bought a squirrelinator, and the squirrelinator will catch those little buggies for you, and then you can do whatever the laws in your place say. Where I am, I'm not allowed to catch flying squirrels or tree squirrels, but I can catch ground squirrels. I'm not allowed to move them or transplant them. I have to kill them humanely, but be mindful of your area and what the laws say you can and cannot do in regard to pests that may be in your area that might destroy your garden. Okay, there, Homestead 101 scholars. That's going to conclude our lecture for today. I do want to leave you with three things that you need to consider before our next lecture, and then I'm going to share a tool with you that I use for planting my own garden. First is measure your space. Whether you're choosing to garden in ground, you plan on purchasing a garden bed or a raised elevated bed, measure those areas so that you can know how much room you have for planting. I utilize a technique called square foot gardening. So when I first started, I had 4 raised beds. Each of those were 4 by 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. That told me in that one bed that was 4 by 4, it was 16 square feet. And utilizing square foot gardening, I can put one plant in each of those square feet sections. So each of those beds held 16 plants. If you're looking at purchasing raised beds, look at the measurements of that and see if it's going to work for what you have planned. Consider what you know you want to start with. What fruits and vegetables would make the biggest impact for you that you want to grow at home? If you're looking at a vertical system, whether you're looking at hydroponics or a soil vertical system, how many pockets are in each of those systems so that you can know it's going to hold what it is you want to plant? Consider your budget. I mentioned before that hydroponic systems can be rather expensive. And then on top of that, you have to add the nutrients that you'll be using to fertilize the plants. So consider those things as well. If you are planning on gardening in the soil, be it in the ground, raised beds, or vertical beds, you'll want to get one of these doohickeys right here. I use this to measure the nutrients in my soil. I also like to use it after I've watered to make sure that I've really let the water seep down to the depths of the bottom parts of the bed so that I can make sure that the soil is very moist. It's going to last till the next time I'm going to water. I only like to water once a week. I don't want to be out there all the time. And the best way to water your fruits and vegetables is to water them deeply and thoroughly and not just sprinkle on the top. And I said I had a tool for you. This right here. This is the planner that I use because I like to work in a 4 by 4 section. Although I do have my plants in ground, I work my way around the beds and I never like to walk on them because the pressure can compress the roots and compact the soil. So having a 4 by 4 area just works best for me. So I use this to do my planning. And as we move forward, we're going to talk about companion planting, which plants should never go together and which ones are best friends. So feel free to, I'm going to put the link up here. So feel free to just print out as many copies as you like, save it to your Google Drive so that you can always have it, whatever works for you. And then we'll start working with this next week. So that's all for now. Have a great day, and I'll see you back here next week.